All right. So, something that I do that most people don't is admit when you're wrong. That's something that I have done since before I even became friends with Natalie. Admit when I'm wrong. But if I'm not wrong, well, kiss my ass. Right now, I am still waiting on a video to download. Some dude named James Crenshaw Jr. asked to be a part of a group that I'm a part of, or that I now possess. It was a group that I was trolled in extensively. Um, this right here is Deputy Jordan Anderson, and when he was hired and stuff like that. And it's all about Jordan Anderson. I've got it saved to my phone. And I wonder what TABE is. TABE. Because Jordan Anderson repeatedly failed it. But it says here that Jordan Anderson was hired at 7/31/2017. What does that mean? Well, that means that I was wrong. I'm not sure if you guys know what that word means. Wrong. It means I was incorrect. Now, like I said, I'm not very good with names. I'm terrible with numbers. That would be dates, things of that nature. That's why the timeline is so important. That's also why it's important for officers to document. The fact is that I was taken to the hospital on January 1st or January 6th, I believe. Might have been January 8th of 2017. I was taken to the Sydney hospital on a suicide watch. Um, the thing is, I couldn't see my loved ones without being threatened, harassed, or assaulted. Now, although it is important for me to admit that I'm wrong and that obviously it could not have been Jordan Anderson, the real question is who was it that took me? Who were the officers who took me to the hospital in January 2017? It was one officer and two state patrol or one deputy and two state patrol officers. So who were they? Now there's a lot of stuff that I got wrong, and there's just a lot of stuff that over time you just don't remember it as well as you used to. And that's a big issue with not writing it down when it happens, not being allowed to write it down when it happens. I mean, me, with as many officers as I had to deal with in the jails, I was literally taking my lunch sacks and tearing their names into the lunch sacks so I could remember which officers it was that I had to deal with. Because I knew that I was going to forget them. They weren't going to allow me a pencil or a piece of paper, and they weren't going to allow me to write down what happened. But I was able to get other inmates to get me some of the things that I was being denied. And that's a good start. Um, right here, I have a bunch of stuff from Arapahoe County that I wrote down, and it says housing assignment here. That tells me which unit I was in at the time that these events happened. The kiosks was a major issue in Arapahoe County Jail. Um, but that wasn't all. The housing assignment was 1 Baker 14. A lot of the officers that I brought things to their attention about how the other officers were treating me. Those other officers that I was trying to report brought my pieces of paper back to me, told me they weren't going to turn them in. That happened repeatedly at most of the jails. They absolutely refused to take a report or investigate anything about the abuse from any of their officers. And of course, when you turn in one of their officers, the other officers get even worse. Now, there's other stuff about Jordan Anderson, and of course, he's not in Arapahoe County. Like I said, this harassment took place in multiple jurisdictions, multiple counties, multiple states. The video of that incident that happened between myself and Alicia Bollinger and Alicia's father, that's actually recorded here on my YouTube. It's on here. You can see Laura Nelson in it. You can see Graham. You can hear Graham speaking for me. I mean, this is a major ongoing issue that needed to be dealt with. Now, a lot of people want to message me. Like, there's a dude that I blocked today. He wanted to be an asshole. I put his number up here. I also took screenshots, of course, which I didn't know how to do until after Natalie was killed. But I speak out. And it's the right thing to do, to speak out. It's also important to admit when you're wrong. There's a lot of stuff that I was wrong about, and all throughout this, you can see the stuff where I admit where I was wrong about stuff. There's a lot of situations that the officers selectively forget after it happens, like Scott DaCosta selectively forgetting about the incident at Pumpkin Pantry, and Officer Jared Hahn selectively forgetting about me having to chase him through town all the way out to Chapel Lake. Now, those situations, yeah, it was very important for me to memorize the names of the officers that I had to deal with, and even then, I didn't get it completely correct. I mean, when I was talking about that incident at Pumpkin Pantry, I thought it was Officer Hahn that I had spoken with. And, part of that stems from having a fucking flashlight shined in my face, but I shined mine back at him, so it's all right. It's called fair and equal treatment. But thank goodness there was somebody there who knew who was there, who paid attention to who was there, and that was Jace Jefferson. And he was also a little more familiar with the cops than I was at that point in time. Like for me, I had to really familiarize myself with an officer and all that before I could remember their names and remember exactly who it was that I was dealing with. Cody Selhorst, he was one of the ones that, yeah, I had to familiarize myself with his name because he was involved in quite a bit. He was also one of my bullies. But it's fine because he wears a badge. It's fine for him to bully me because he's got a badge. It's fine for him to lie because he's got a badge. It's fine for him to protect his fellow officers because he's got a badge. Now, there's a lot of stuff that's really fucked up in the world, and it's wrong of all of us to turn a blind eye to it. The stuff that's going on with all of this, it all should have been left the fuck alone. I mean, I shouldn't have had to go to Facebook. I shouldn't have had to go to YouTube. I should have been able to go to the police and show them what the fuck was going on. Now, they told me that it was out of jurisdiction, out of jurisdiction. Meanwhile, stuff from all sorts of jurisdictions, slander from other jurisdictions and other states was allowed in my court dates where I wasn't even allowed to speak up. I wasn't allowed to defend myself. And in some cases, I was illegally prevented from even going. However, the outcome of those court dates prevents me from ever having an honest day in court again, despite the fact that I went to every single court date, every single one. I was prevented from being released because of a court date that I couldn't go to because I was locked up. I was incarcerated in Arapahoe County Jail, and Arapahoe County refused to allow me a PR bond because I hadn't shown up to that court date. How can I show up to that court date if I'm in your jail? And they knew that I was in that jail. They tried to pretend like I was a flight risk. How the fuck am I a flight risk if I've literally spent every fucking dime that I have to make sure that I go to every fucking court date? Now, this one right here, out of all of the letters that I wrote about officers in Arapahoe County Jail, this is one that I got back. October 9th, 2018. Sean Schwartz, Arapahoe County Detention Facility, P.O. Box 4918, Centennial, Colorado 80155-4918. Mr. Schwartz, this is to advise you that the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office Internal Affairs Unit has received your complaint regarding your court case. Having received your complaint, it appears that your complaint is with the legal representation you have received through the Colorado Public Defender's Office. Please address complaints about how your case has been handled to Meg A. Ring, Colorado State Public Defender, 1300 Broadway, Suite 400, Denver, Colorado 80203. Phone number 303-764-1400. state.pubdef@coloradodefenders.us. Thank you for bringing your concerns to our attention. Respectfully, Lieutenant Rich Anselmi, Inspector, Support Services Bureau, Internal Affairs Section. Out of everything that I wrote, this is all I ever got back. The problem is, they kept on throwing things away in front of me. They threw things away in front of other inmates who saw it. The police repeatedly told me that they would do something. There was I want to say Officer Robbins, and that would be Larimer County, was supposed to come talk to me about what those officers were putting me through. So when her and this other officer came to talk to me, they actually hadn't shown up to talk to me like they were supposed to about the way the officers were treating me. No, what they had shown up for was a disciplinary review because of how I reacted to the abuse by those officers, to the abuse by the courts. And it is abuse to take advantage of someone not having any money, not having the ability to defend themselves, not having a safe environment because of slander. Slander by who? Well, it started off with the Bollinger family. That slander started off specifically with Natalie and Alicia Bollinger. Maddie Boa, when I was on the phone with her coming back from Virginia, I wasn't even out of the state of Virginia when she told me that Alicia said that I had threatened her and her family. I hadn't. I got stuck in the fucking road while dehydrated, and I've already shown my paperwork from the Chesapeake Hospital. Yes, I was dehydrated. They put fluids in me. They didn't put those fluids in me for no reason. They also diagnosed me with what do you call that? Um, diabetes mellitus. No, I don't have diabetes. I don't. I got a history of it in my family, but the doctor didn't bother checking into it. The doctor walked in, took a look at my feet, which were, I had boot rot, and she yelled out at the nurse, "Yeah, he's got diabetes." That's not much of a diagnosis. The doctor didn't do very much work, and the doctor was obviously fucking wrong. But it's still on my paperwork. Is that doctor going to admit that she was wrong? She better. But the other thing is, she might have to worry about losing her job if she tells the truth, if she admits that she was wrong. However, I'm willing to eat a whole loaf of bread in front of you guys right here on YouTube to show that I don't have diabetes. I eat way too many starches to have diabetes. But the other thing is, just because I was wrong about Jordan Anderson being the officer that I spoke with, especially since I was under a severe amount of duress during those situations, doesn't mean that I was wrong about the situation. When it came to a lot of the situations that I was in, like especially with Shannon Alvarado, who is an alcoholic, those situations, Shannon Alvarado could have written them down. She could have listened to what I was saying and written that down. She could have written down what she knew, but she didn't. And then months later, she's like, "Yeah, I remember that. I remember the situation." And she writes it down and she finally writes it down, mind you. This is months after I have left her house. And she's sending me this stuff where she's talking about Clearview. I'm like, no, that didn't happen at Clearview. That situation happened in Longmont. Well, Sean, you have a better memory than I do. Yeah, I have a better memory of where it happened, but your memory about the situation is the important part, and you are too drunk to remember shit. I'm severely overwhelmed right now, and I have to remain calm. I have to pretend all the time that everything is fine and fucking dandy, and it's not. I already know that no matter what, that I'm the one who's going to be punished. I'm not a child molester, but I get treated like one anyway. I'm not a rapist, but I get treated like one anyway. I'm not a murderer, but I get treated like one anyway. And you guys think I should just take it. No, I shouldn't. Everyone should have the right to defend themselves. But also, everybody should have the right to information about themselves. I mean, it shouldn't have taken this long for me to find out who it is that took me to Scotts Bluff or who took me to, what was it, Sydney. But the difference between that scenario there and the scenario with Officer Hahn is that by the time I was dealing with Officer Hahn, like I knew who he was. Now, the officer that I had spoken with, or officers that I had spoken with before that, when I interacted with him, it was the first time that I had interacted with him. Now, when it came to Jordan Anderson, he was a familiar face. He was definitely a familiar face, which means that I did interact with him prior to that whole situation there with Laura Nelson at Nettie's Treasures here in Chapel, Nebraska. Now, Jordan Anderson, he, I believe, according to obviously A lot of other people were wrong, and even though they wouldn't admit it, I do. Although Shannon Alvarado was wrong about which hospital I was in for a particular incident, it doesn't mean that she was wrong about the incident. It just means she was wrong about the location. That's where it gets real complicated with the number of places that I went to. And it does, once you're dealing with that many officers and that many locations and that many counties and that many bullies, I mean, yeah, it's real fucking complicated. And between doing something about it and going, oh, that's too complicated, I'm not going to do anything about it. Well, they chose to go, that's too complicated. But it didn't start off that fucking complicated. It started off as, hey, I need someone to sit down with me and Natalie or call me and Natalie over the phone and fucking hash this shit out as adults. When it got to the point where I was being assaulted, I mean, I wasn't even in Boulder, I want to say 2 to 3 hours, and I could be wrong about that. I'm pretty sure it was the first day that I was back in Boulder after Virginia, but it might have been the second day. I don't know. I don't know for certain if it was the first day I was there or the second day that I was there that I left. But I do know that I left because I was being threatened. I was being harassed. I had people accusing me of doing things that I didn't do. I had people accusing me of stalking some girl in Virginia. That didn't happen. I had people accusing me of threatening some girl and her family in Virginia, and that didn't fucking happen. I had people shoving me around. And later on, I actually had somebody knock my phone out of my hand. And the guy does look very similar to one of Natalie's boyfriends that she had at the time of her death, and she did have more than one because she was dating Justin Ward, and she was also dating God, what's that other bitch's name? Um, Joey Moreno. And the guy who knocked my phone out of my hand over at the band shell in Boulder looked like Joey Moreno. And I really had to look at the picture, and go, well, is it just that it's been so long, or was that him? Because I'm not for certain. But that's also where being able to look at the evidence comes in. Like the situations that happen in the jails. I mean, there was so much of that shit happening. No, I'm not going to remember every fucking officer. There were too many. And that's why I was writing it down. Whenever I was trying to turn in a police officer so that I could get a piece of paper and a pencil so I could write it down, I got put on suicide watch and I was assaulted on suicide watch. I had officers making fun of me while I'm suicide watch. If somebody's suicidal and you're genuinely concerned for them, are you going to harass them and make fun of them? It's a good question. But then the question remains, which officers did I have to deal with? Now, here in Chapel, Nebraska, with them not documenting things, which they have a long history of doing, of not documenting things, of not writing it down, especially when their officers are doing wrong shit. They have a long history of not turning on their body cameras. And why would they? If they're going to commit a crime and they know that they're going to commit a crime, are they going to turn on their body cameras? Probably not. But then there's situations like the jails. In the jails, they can simply look. It's not difficult to look, is it? To look at the cameras that are in the jails and see which officers were involved. Now, they don't have any sound in the jails, and they claim that that's for our safety. No, it's not for our safety. It's so that officers can claim whatever they want. They can say whatever they want. Now, this bitch who was harassed earlier, I was pissed off at him. I'm like, give me your name, bitch. Give me your fucking name, you fucking coward. You want to harass me? Give me your name. You just want somebody that you can treat like shit, who isn't going to bust you in the fucking head. And then his fucking nasty little cunt rag ass wanted to pretend like I was threatening to bust him in the head. Wanted to pretend like I was threatening him with violence. Bitch, don't play fucking victim with me. I already knew that coming out in public with everything was going to have a lot of fucking people treating me like shit, especially after what happened to Natalie. I already knew it. But the fact is, I'm out to show the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. All of these people that I asked for help, all of these people who said that they would make a report and didn't, they wanted to ask me what to write about. Well, first of all, not in texting. All right. I don't mind if you record the phone call. I don't. Chances are pretty good now that I'm going to record the phone call. But it was about the ineffective nature of texting. That is not an effective way of communicating. Not for me and not for any of these people. When you're saying nice stuff like how's the weather and shit like that, yeah, fuck. It's snowing outside. That's an easy explanation. Yes, it's snowing outside, and it really is. I'll show you. Ugh. That there is snow on the ground. Could I text that? Oh yeah. That's a simple fucking question and a simple fucking answer. But then there's the fact there's a lot of situations where, all right, a lot of people were saying that I was a liar because I said deputy this or officer that, and they're like, well, he's not a fucking officer, he's a deputy, or he's not a fucking police officer, he's a fucking deputy. Like, my bad. The more stressed I am, the more those words are going to be interchangeable. The more things are going to come out wrong. And the more stressed I am, the more it's going to happen. The more frequently it's going to happen. And there's a few cases on here where, yeah, I was fucking wrong. Where I was blaming stuff on Damien Applegate. Stuff that Damien Applegate didn't do. It was a guy named Brad. Now, does that make me a bad person for getting it wrong? No. Especially when I'm willing to admit it. Now, a lot of these people, when they did things wrong or said things wrong, rather than correct it and say, I'm sorry I was wrong, they wanted to play it off or play victim. Like, oh, you're a terrible person for checking me on that. Like, no, I'm not being a grammar Nazi. This is important. I'm not doing it to be a piece of shit to you. It's important. But then again, these people don't understand the situation because they've never been in it. I mean, yeah, people who have been raped can understand that part of my life. People who have been in foster care can understand that part of my life. People who have been homeless can understand that part of my life. People who have adverse reactions to these medications can understand that aspect of my life. People who have been targeted by the police can understand that aspect of my life. People who have been given the mentally ill treatment can understand that aspect of my life. People who have jumped through all these hoops and just wasted their time and money jumping through these hoops, they can understand that aspect of my life. But how many people understand all of it? There's a lot of stuff that I keep reading that really fucking gropes my goat. There are a lot of man hating women out there. They just hate men. Not the man who did them wrong, but men do this. Men do this. All of my predators have names. All of the people who did me wrong have names. Not men, not women. Now, if I say women, I'm talking about something that happened over time with many different women. There are a lot of women that I helped move out of fucked up situations, and many of them are very similar. My husband's abusing me, or my boyfriend is abusing me, or but in some cases, I have helped men move out of the shitty situations too. Not as often though. Where we teach women to rely on men and pretend they did it all themselves, we teach men that they literally have to do it all by themselves. It's pretty windy out there. That's Nebraska for you. But unlike Sheriff Scott DaCosta, and unlike a great many other people, I at least admit when I'm wrong. And instead of just taking Scott DaCosta's word for it, I looked it up. Now, as far as when I was taken into the hospital in Sydney, I could find out the exact date of that just by getting a hold of the hospital. But then again, it's how I get a hold of the hospital. If I just call them up, what's the likelihood that they're going to tell me that information? It's not very good at all, is it? I'm going to have to fill out a piece of paper and have that information released. And because of the term mentally ill, I'm going to have it released to somebody else. And although it's going to be a big pain in the ass, it's going to take a lot of time, it's something that I have to do. It's also going to cost money that I don't have. But I firmly believe that somebody needs to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And if there's something that I'm wrong about, it'll come out in court. Although it actually won't, because of the court dates that I've had already. I mean, in order to gain access to the evidence so that I could actually show it, because nobody's going to show it for me, in order to stop the torture and the abuse in those facilities, especially with public pretenders who are just writing a free fucking check. Yeah, I had to plead out in the hopes that I would be able to go at them as soon as I got out of court. As soon as I got out of the jails, when I like when I got out of Boulder County Jail in August, my whole plan was to go to court with Alicia Bollinger and show her what the fuck these people were doing. Because obviously, we don't need a fucking 10 million go-betweens who are all fucking crazy. This needed to be hashed out between me and Natalie before Natalie was killed as adults. And she wasn't going to be an adult about it. While I was being assaulted, I was being threatened. While I was separated from my loved ones, she wasn't. She wasn't separated from her loved ones. She wasn't being assaulted. She didn't have people threatening to kill her over it. She didn't have people threatening to kill her family. And although these people were accusing me of being on meth, and obviously I'm not, I accused her of being on heroin, which obviously she was. So at least I told the truth. But without an honest fucking day in court, I mean, holy shit. You know how many times I heard Alicia or read anything from Alicia claiming that I was a child molester or a rapist? Not even one. How about from Natalie Bollinger? Not even one. Not even one. Obviously, Amy Witcher was not keeping her children safe. Obviously, she knew that Andrew was on methamphetamine. It's obvious. Now let's see if that one's done downloading yet. It is. It certainly is. Now sometimes when I'm done downloading something and it just took like 3.5, 4 hours for that to download. Sometimes when that happens, it tells me that it didn't download. So I gotta start all over again and wait hours and hours and hours again. A lot of the stuff that I have here, like when I dealt with those officers before Natalie was killed, I didn't write all their names down. The only reason that I knew Officer Michael West's name is because I got his business card. A lot of officers refused to give me their business cards. They magically didn't have any. Also, a lot of the guards in the jail covered up their name tags. And they refused to talk to any witnesses. They refused to take any of the abuse that I was enduring seriously. Now, as far as people harassing me on the internet, well, shit, that's easy. It's easy to document, it's easy to take pictures of. It's not easy to get somebody to take a look at it, though. But the thing is that it wasn't just abuse on the internet. See, on the internet, it's just a bunch of fucking bullshit. But it's the fact that that bullshit on the internet resulted in people harming me in real life that is the important part. Instead of being a little bitch and threatening me, do it. Fucking follow through, by all means. As far as the cops and the courts go, I can't see my loved ones. I can't go to Colorado and see my loved ones. That's where the positive people in my life were. That is why Boulder was my home. Because that was somewhere that I was allowed to be who I am. I was allowed to be happy. I was allowed to help others. I was allowed to protect others. I made jokes when they had the feed that came through and fed all the homeless people at the library. Yeah, I made jokes the whole time I was there. A lot of these people that I became friends with, like the Clang family, it was because they used to feed the homeless. Pastor Benny, I became friends with him because he used to feed the homeless and his family. But the other thing is, when you have disabilities, when you have no money, when you have no rights, you need somebody to fight for your rights because the Constitution is supposed to be for all of us, not just the middle class, not just the rich. Meanwhile, the middle class, this is the largest group of freeloaders in America, not the rich. I mean, yeah, the rich are a bunch of fucking freeloaders. I'm not going to deny that at all. But the middle class, the credit class, the people who live on credit, who are able to borrow on credit, those are the freeloaders. They die owing thousands of dollars, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's the American taxpayer who pays for that. For Donald Trump paying his little bit of taxes, it's not going to take a meal off of his table. But for somebody who's homeless, somebody who's not able to earn enough money at their job to be able to even afford to go to work in some cases and still feed themselves, yeah, that little bit of taxes prevents them from being able to get unhomeless. And then you have to add on the fact that there are so many anti homeless laws. You hate poor people in America. You blame poor people for everything wrong in your life, and then you punish those poor people for being poor. You don't want to tell on your daddy for raping you, but you have no problems taking it out on a homeless person. And then we got these college kids in Boulder, and mind you, this happens nationwide. It's not just in Boulder, but they go hobo bashing. What's that? That's where you, as an upper middle class white person, you feel it is okay for you to go harm people that you feel are below you, less human than you, people that you feel like you can get away with harming. Now, who is it that you think you can get away with harming? The homeless. And you're right, you can. You absolutely can victimize the homeless and get away with it. Andrew Witcher gets all fucked up on drugs, all fucked up on meth, and his family still loves him, right? Now, what would happen if his family wasn't willing to put up with all of his antics, wasn't willing to put up with the abuse that they have to endure because he's always fucked up on methamphetamines? He'd be homeless. But he's not homeless. He's a meth head in a house. Meanwhile, there are lots of homeless people that are not on meth. They're not on alcohol. Three-quarters of homeless people are not drug addicts. Three-quarters of them. While you say that we're all drug addicts or child molesters or rapists or whatever, most of us aren't. Most of us aged out of the system. A lot of people who age out of the system are drug dependent. They are addicted to the medications that they've been on. That doesn't make them bad people. I mean, shit, Natalie Bollinger was so fucking addicted to that heroin that she didn't really care who she hurt. She was still a good person. But then again, Shannon Alvarado, when she's sober, she is a wonderful person. But when she's drunk, she doesn't care who she hurts. And sure, she's not hurting people physically, but she is definitely harming them emotionally, and she doesn't care because she's drunk. And then when she's sober, she thinks that we should get over it. And then she gets drunk and does it again and again and again. That was the biggest issue I had with my dad. My dad was actually all right when he was sober. He was still an asshole, but I can't think of a time that he actually hit me when he was sober. I honestly can't. There's a couple of times where, he might have been drunk, he might have been sober, I don't know. But I do know that the majority of the time when he was beating on me, it was after he was drinking rum and coke. And it's not like he was beating the fuck out of my face and I could go into the police department and say, hey, look at all of this. He busted in my eye socket, like what happened to Kimberly Martinez. No, he was the type that'll lecture you, points his hand at you like this, yelling at you. And then he'll punch you in the stomach. He says, look me in the eyes. And if you're not looking him in the eyes, he's going to punch you in the stomach again. And then he'll go off on his rant for a bit. And then he wants an immediate answer when he asks the question. Now, any of you who are familiar with Asperger's, you know that it might take up to a minute for me to be able to answer. I mean, I have to process the question that you're asking, especially when you form it in a way that, yeah, you could be asking multiple questions. And I have to figure out which one you mean. But if you're not fast enough, you're going to get another one to the gut. And my dad got a fucking kick out of that, punching me in the stomach and watching me go. But the thing is, there's a lot of stuff that as I've been going through all of this and trying to process it all, that, yeah, there's stuff that I was wrong about. There's stuff I was definitely wrong about. But does that make me a bad person? If I'm wrong about something, does that make me a meth head? If I'm wrong about something, does that make me a child molester? If I'm wrong about something, does that make me a rapist? If I'm wrong about something, does that make me a child abuser? If I'm wrong about something, does that make me a murderer? If you say something that's wrong, that doesn't make you a liar. It doesn't. If you're not willing to look it up, though, if you're not willing to admit that you're wrong, then you're a liar. I've had arguments with people over some of the stupidest shit. My older brother Eric, me and him argued for about a year over whether or not a Browning 50 cal has a titanium barrel. They don't. They don't have titanium barrels. He was trying to tell me that divers go under the ocean to pick up these 50 cals because the titanium barrels are so expensive. I'm like, no, they don't. It's not titanium. I actually went so far as to look it up. I actually, on one of my computers, had a thing that shows the metal composition of the barrels of a Browning 50 cal, specifically to show my older brother. But after him screaming at me for almost a year and almost coming to blows on several occasions because he has to be right, I brought him the evidence to show him. He's like, I don't fucking care. All right. People will treat you like shit over something that they were wrong about. And then when you bring them evidence that they were wrong, they don't want to look at it. They don't want to admit that they were wrong. They'll just simply say, I don't care. If nobody goes in with you, does that mean that you didn't try? See, out of all of these people who said that they would go in with me to talk to the police, none of them actually ever did. Miss Peaches tried once, and I will be the first one to admit that. And although I explained to her much earlier in the day, hey, you know, this is where it's at. You said you'd go in with me. You know, we need to get there while they're still open. And although it turned out to be a fire department, kind of odd, isn't it? The Colorado State Patrol in Boulder is out of a fire department. She did go down there with me after waiting on her all day long to get done playing her video games on her phone and do all of her texting to people on the phone and all of her Facebook posting and updates on the phone. And we finally left her house right around 4 o'clock, I believe. I mean, yeah, that was the one time. And I let her know before we left. I'm like, you know, she around 4 o'clock, just before 4 o'clock, I think it was. She let me know that she was ready to go. I'm like, they're probably not going to be open. And we got there and we pressed the call button, and they told me and her both that we had to make an appointment. So she says, "All right, Sean, you make the appointment." I was like, "Well, what day do you have off? Because I can't go in by myself. You already know how that turns out." And she just wouldn't tell me. Oh, fine, fuck it. Now it's looking like the video that I downloaded um, is done. So I'm going to check on here to see if it is, and if it is downloaded, then I will start on the third video between myself and Amy and Andrew Witcher. If it didn't finish downloading, then I'll have to start all over again. It's 8 o'clock now, so hopefully it would be finished by, let's see, it took 3 or 4 hours to finish this time. Here it is. So it did download. That means that I can plug this into my computer using the cord, which I believe I left downstairs. It's colder than a cast iron commode on the shady side of an iceberg up here, so it's not exactly fun, but of course downstairs is Game of Thrones playing. Y'all know how I feel about that. When you make a mistake, that's okay. But you have to be willing to admit it. And here's this dude, Tyler Winter. He's connected with like 2 or 3 other profiles. They're just harassment profiles. That's what they do. I already blocked him once on here, and one of the other profiles that he's associated with, they're spammers. That's what they do. Says nice content. It was really entertaining. You know, it's nice to read that stuff, sure, but it's also bullshit. It's just, this is going to come up on every video that I make. And another one is the comedic Canadian or something like that. And then the other one is some weird fucking name. Here I am. It says live now. I've been asked why I put my hand over my mouth. Look up MMIW or MMIP. Those of you in native country already know what that